Hello, hello.
Hello. Such a riveting trailer. Such a riveting trailer.
And the movie holds up.
Yes, it
Yes,
does.
I'm really
Totally
really
holds
excited
up.
about it. I'm at the Toronto International Film Festival. Can you believe that?
It's amazing.
Here we go. Here we go. That's really awesome. Really awesome.
I remember interviewing you for a movie, another movie like maybe 10 years ago, and I remember you telling me, I have this movie that I've been working on. It's in the back of my mind that one day I want to do.
Yeah.
And I wondered, is that ever going to happen? And now here we are.
Here we are. Yeah.
So many years later, and this is something that you were actually, you might have talked to me like maybe a decade ago about it, but you were working on this, and this was in your mind for more than 2 decades.
Yeah, I wrote it in 1995 and held on to it for 26 years, waiting for the right time. What I knew about my entire life is I had to be intentional. Just as a kid, from some of the things that I endured growing up, I didn't even know that I was being trained to be intentional, but as a kid trying to survive, there were things you had to learn to navigate. So I carried that into adulthood, not even being aware of it, but when I started doing television and film in Hollywood, I knew that if I had had a flop, then I wouldn't be able to continue in the business, because as a black person in Hollywood, I may not get as many chances as my counterpart. So what I had to do was do what I knew would work, which is Medea and the Why Did I Get Married and all these movies that my audiences loved so much and endeared towards so much that critics kind of frowned upon. But I knew that I had to secure my footing. I knew that I had to build my brand, build the studio, get to a place where I can stand solid and say, okay, now I want to do some things that I wanted to do for a long time, and Jazzman is one of those things.
Now, when you first came up with this idea and you started shopping this film, you talked about not wanting to flop, but this is the first project that you were bringing out to Hollywood. What was the reaction at that time?
Well, let's be clear. I didn't think it would flop, but what I know about working with companies and Lionsgate and so forth is that there was an excitement when I would do things that they knew would work. Like if it was a Medea thing, they'd all be like, gosh, let's throw everything we have to make it work. But something that was different, there was always a bit of a challenge, like we're not so sure about this, and I didn't know I would have the full support behind it. Because no matter how great the picture is, if you don't have the support of the studio, you're not so sure that it's going to work. So that's the first part of it. But the first film I ever shot was Diary of a Mad Black Woman. I didn't go out with Jazzman yet. I just wanted to hold that for a little while. So Diary of a Mad Black Woman, go out to Hollywood and start meeting with people, and they were giving me all these notes and things they wanted to change. But I had been on the road doing that show for 30, 40,000 people a week of my audience. I was performing live as Medea on stage in houses that are 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 seaters all across the country, across America. And I wanted to be in a place at that time where I could write a movie and deliver it directly to the audience, just as I had done it on stage, without a studio saying, change this, change that, change this, change that. So when I got to Hollywood, I was met with, oh, no, you need to change all of this. I was like, no, I don't. Yeah, I'm out of here. Yeah.
What were some of the things that were like, you need to change?
Well, there was just references of people didn't understand. Like somebody read the script and one of the characters said, oh baby, oh, thank you, sugar. And the guy was like, one young white guy was like, why is she asking for sugar? Oh. So you need to change that. I'm like, no, it's, and if I have to explain to you, then I'm probably not at the right place. So that was pretty evident in the beginning.
When you're having all this success with the Medea movies and so much else, and TV shows, and did the thought ever come in your mind, well, maybe I should just let this go, it's been so long, as far as this A JAZZMAN'S Blues? Like, what made you continue to keep that in your heart and say one day? Because sometimes people have something and you're just like, okay, that was a moment then, and I'm already doing all these other things.
Oh no, no, Jazzman was always something that had to find its way. It would always come to the front of my mind. It would always show up. It would always be present, no matter what I was doing. I always wanted to do this film. I always wanted to tell this story, because it was so special to me, and the first film that I ever wrote, I didn't even know how to write in film format. There was no final draft back then, right? So how it started was I was in Atlanta. I couldn't afford to go to theater, but I heard that August Wilson was having a play at the Alliance Theater. And what I would do is I'd wait for the patrons to come out and smoke at intermission, and then I'd kind of sneak in with them as if I belonged in. So I would only see the second half of these shows. But I think the show was Two Trains Running, and it was literally a rainy night in Georgia, and there was a little cafe, and there was a reception afterwards, and I got a chance to talk to him, and I said, I've done this play, and people frown on it because it's called Chitlin Circuit, and I kind of felt small talking to him. Nobody knew who I was at the time, and he encouraged me so much. He said, "You tell that story of I Know I've Been Changed, but also if there are other stories you want to tell those too." I went home and I started writing. That's where Jazzman started. So in homage to him and in thanks to him, I had to do it. I had to make it happen. But again, intentionality from a kid, I had to follow the intention of what it would take to get to a place where I could secure this in a way that I could introduce new talent and new faces and tell a story that people hadn't seen from me.
Now, where does this story come from? Where was the inspiration behind these characters?
What happens with me as a writer is that I'll sit in a room, I'll be driving, or I'll sit here or something. People think I'm crazy when I say this, and I'll hear something in my head. Somebody will say, "My name is Bayou." I'm like, okay, and I'll just jot that down and just keep going. And then 2 days later, 3 days later, they'll start telling me a story. So figuratively, I'm hearing these things, so I just start writing it down, and these characters all start to speak. And if they say something I don't understand, then I start to chase down the motivation from, well, why did you do that? And that's how the story forms. I never go in with an outline. I never go in with the understanding of this is what I want to write. If these people show up in my head, I listen to them and let them tell me what they want to say. I know it sounds weird, but for a writer, I think a writer would get it. But for most people, they think, he crazy as shit.
So once you came up with these characters, it's just an amazing story. Over the years, what were some of the notes? Did you go back to it and continue to tinker with it?
No. What I wrote in 1995 is the same script. The thing that changed were the locations, because I spent a weekend in Savannah, and I thought when I got there, I was like, oh no, this is the area they described to me. I thought it was Louisiana, but it was definitely Georgia, right outside of Savannah, with the Spanish moss and the old oaks and the history that they told, and the way the light was falling in the evenings at a certain time of year. I thought this is where the movie needs to be set. So. A lot of times, as they tell me, when I see things, or I'll work with a set designer or a costumer, and they'll bring things in, I go, how did you know? Like, I know you read the script, but I didn't give you the detail to be able to show me exactly what they showed me. So that's when I know it's right.
So once you started filming it after all these years, first of all, what made it this the time, rather than 5 years ago, or what have you, like what made this the time?
Two things. The partnership with Netflix allowed me to understand that I'd been told many, many years that black movies or movies with black stars do not travel international outside of Will Smith or maybe Denzel. That's it. There's no international audience. Well, doing 2 movies with Netflix and seeing them hit #1 in different parts of the world, many countries, it reaffirmed what I already knew. So I knew that, okay, now I have a platform that if I place this on, the world will get a chance to see it. So that was really, really great. But also watching what's happening in America right now, certain political officials banning books from libraries, wanting to reimagine and not wanting kids, white kids, black kids, to learn the history of what black people endured in America, wanting to water it down, wanting to homogenize it, which is shocking to me, because what I know for sure is that if you do not learn your history, you're destined to repeat it. And people think, well, how can that be? We'll never go back. Well, if you look at what's happening with abortion right now in America, you realize, oh yeah, there's some things that can change. Mm-hmm. So I thought the timing was right, because even though it's a fictional story, if it sparks curiosity and people want to go and research and look back at some of the things that happened during Jim Crow, and some of the things that happened to us as people, and our love and how we loved, or the things we had to do to be okay in the world, then you find a lot of what the movie is factual.
So we saw the trailer, and let's talk a little bit about the plot.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you got a sense of what we saw, but it's two star-crossed lovers. And
What does that mean when people say star-crossed? I don't know what that means.
To me, it means like it's kind of they love each other, but you just know it's never going to work out.
So star-crossed lovers means it's never going to work out.
Yeah, like it's sort of like
Oh, they're crossed, but
yeah.
See, that's been every relationship of mine been star-crossed. Yeah, I'm sorry. Tell me.
No, so but from the beginning, you could tell that they have this great love for each other, and they have all these different obstacles, and there's just so many different through lines. There's there's what they have to deal with Jim Crow. She's passing at a certain point of this movie, but there's also the struggle that Bayou has with his own family.
Yeah.
And there's so much going on, but it makes sense. So I'm kind of curious as to what you want people to take away from this movie as far as some of the lessons.
For me, if it were a Medea movie, I'd say this is the lesson. This is what I want to say. But for this, I'm leaving it up to the audience to take what is needed in their lives or what they want to see. Because what I've learned about art is, I don't like abstract art. I see people spend hundreds of millions of dollars for 2 lines and a circle, and I go, and they talk about the mood and the swings of this paintbrush, and it's like, I don't get it. And sometimes they look at me and go, you should. So I don't like to, when people who have art, I don't like to want to, put my impression on them of what to think. I want them to walk away with what they feel. And watching this journey of these people, these star-crossed lovers, I want people to feel something, to feel them, to be moved by them. But as far as the overall picture, I want people to walk away with their own opinion.
Mm-hmm. There's been a few movies over the years where you have a character who passes from imitation to life to passing. That just came out a few...
which was great, which was really good.
Yes, so amazing. And in those films, sometimes the passing person is sort of like, not the villain, but it's hard to root for them. Yeah. Can you root for Letty in this movie?
For Leanne, for sure.
Leanne, I'm sorry.
Yeah, because you know what I found? Even right now, I'm working with Dr. Gates, Skip Gates, on my history, and I was talking to my aunt, and there's a town in Louisiana called Butlerstown, and her mother, my grandmother, was a butler, and her parents were butlers. Well, there's no way a town in Louisiana would have been named after them unless they were white people. And we finally found a picture of her through Ancestry, and we were blown away because my aunt had never seen her. She couldn't remember her. She was so young when she died. But to see her, you would think she was a white woman. So somewhere along on my mother's side, there were people who were passing. And it's easy from this seat to pass judgment on them going, what are you doing? Why would you do that? Black is everything, black is king. But if you find yourself in a situation where you have an opportunity to become someone else, and even if you have to turn your back on all you came from to give you an opportunity for a better life to your future and your children, and even be able to send money back to the people who you have to turn your back on, it's hard for me to stand in judgment of that from this seat, because that took a lot for them to go through back to make those choices and decisions, I'm sure. So I don't think you'll see her as a villain, but I think you'll completely see the humanity of it. And so Leia, who plays the role, her first time, in a film, she was saying how being a black woman who can pass, how she loved having an opportunity to explore this world that she finds herself in quite often. Not that she's trying to pass, but people don't know that she's black and say things, and she hears things, and she's able to do things that others aren't able to, even still. So it's a fascinating thing, and the way she take her portrayal of the character, I think, will make people really have some sympathy for her. And
what the character Bayou, who is played beautifully by Joshua.
Joshua Boone, another new face. Yeah, he immerses himself in it. Yeah.
What does that character represent to you? Like, what do you want people to take away from that character?
You know, when I wrote him, originally I wanted to play him because there were a lot of similarities to what he had dealt with his family, to what I dealt with my father. Me being, to my father, I'm dark-skinned. My older sister was, you know, my father was lighter skinned with hazel eyes, and my sister was lighter skinned. So we were what would be called the black sheep, and he didn't care for me and my other sister as much because of our skin color. So colorism was very much a thing, and it shows up in this movie. And to have Joshua be able to take the role on, understand it, and just immerse himself in it and become it, I think that as people see him, they will see Bayou. And that's one of the beautiful things about casting someone that nobody has seen in anything else, is you can see them as the character. You don't have to get over them, the superstar of who they are. So I'm excited for that for many people.
Now, I was reading you talked about how when you're trying to cast this movie, initially there were certain people that you wanted, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you felt that there were people who didn't want to be in your movie because of the so-called association with Tyler Perry, which shocks me because you've had legends and Oscar winners and so many people in your movies anyway. So talk a little bit about that, because that surprised me.
There's a generation that's come up that would see the Madea movies and grew up on them, enjoyed them, but got a little older and like, oh my God, this is so lowbrow. There's such much a higher level. Who phone is that? Who phone ringing? I'm sorry. Look, I'm trying to talk about jazz, man. I'm trying to have some class. Y'all ready to get together? But no, so I called all of these young actors and, you know, up and coming, you see them and things. It's like, listen, I've got this movie. They read the script. They love the script. They want to do it. Then they're like, let me talk to my team. So they'll go talk to their teams, and then they come back and like, well, I don't know. Well, I don't know, Tyler, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to pass. I was like, okay. And I got frustrated. I'm thinking, you know, there was a time when, you know, Idris Elba and Viola Davis, Kerry Washington, Sofia Vergara, I can go down the list of people who've worked with me who people didn't know their names at the time, you know, giving them, you know, these opportunities. And I don't think these younger folks understood it. So in the frustration of it, I also realized, like, wait a minute, you have to understand two things. They have never seen you do anything like this, and I don't know if they think Medea's gonna pop up from behind a tree. As if I don't know the genre I'm working in. So and I also understand that when you're on the come up of your career, you have to be very careful with your choices. So I would hate to have somebody in a movie and a critic tear their performance apart. It's an awful feeling because I'm directing them and I'm leading them. So I understand that, and I don't want the pressure of somebody coming up and their first bad review is for something that I did. That would be awful. So I was like, you know what, let me take the pressure off myself. But also, what I love to do is give opportunities to new people. So to have Soleil and Josh be in this movie, and lead it refocused me to where I started in the beginning of giving people opportunities. So, yeah.
Now, you talk about critics, and certainly it's been a complicated relationship throughout the years. You made many great movies, but you've also had, you know, taking your share of shots from critics as well. What was the pressure that you felt, if anything, doing this type of movie, which we're now premiering at TIFF at a film festival? Did you kind of feel that there were things you had to do differently, and like, and was it sort of like you needed this to be seen as, to be embraced by critics more so than other projects you worked on?
Well, it wasn't the focus, because again, it goes back to intentionality, right? When I was doing, and will do again, Madea and other movies that my audience loves and wants to see, that it's intentional. The stories are intentional. The way they're told are intentional. The simplicity of the story, the storylines, the way they go, the broad, it's all very intentional. So so if a critic sees it and doesn't get it, it's okay, because my audience loves it and they become huge successes because these people who are me, who grew up like me, who came from where I come from, who know all of these kind of characters in their lives really appreciate it, right? So that's the intention there. Jazzman is a different intention. The intention here is you've got a story set in the 1940s that has to look a certain way, that has to rise to, that everyone that's hired, every department has to rise to everything that's on the page. And they both are intentional, but very different intentions. So to have that and understand that, for me, had always kept me grounded and clear in no matter what the criticism was. I understood the intention.
I have a question. Being that this, you might not have thought about it since this is your baby, but was there ever a point when you were doing so many movies and so busy, you're sort of like, maybe I need to give this movie to someone else and like I'll produce it, but like just
never,
so it's
never, never, not Jazzman, not that one. No. Because of the way that I had held on to it like a child. Even to the point of now that it's done, these last couple of weeks, I was sitting in my house. I fly model airplanes and I work on them. And that's all I was doing, but I was feeling sad. I was like, why are you feeling so sad? What is this sadness? And I was grieving that it was done. I'd carried it for 27 years. And it's like, I don't know what this feels like, but I guess I could equate it to, or try to, a parent sending their kid off to college and you're an empty nester. So it took something out of me that I had been holding for so long. I was just like, wow, it's a very interesting feeling. But no, I couldn't pass it on because number one, I wanted to be sure that it was the way I saw it and not given to someone else's vision. And I'm very, very happy with the end result.
Being that you were able to now also do it at your studio and have this, put the resources into it that you may not have been able to do years ago. Once you finally got into that set, what was it like producing and directing and just even like the first day?
Well, first of all, understanding that I couldn't have done it 15 years ago. And I didn't direct my first movie because I'd never directed anything, so I wanted to see how it was done, which drove me crazy because I was looking at the amount of waste because I was also writing the checks. I'm like, why are we sitting here for 4 hours looking at a light? You don't know where to place the light to make it work? What is going on, right? So it was very frustrating at that time. But the first day on set, from the first shot, Brett Pollack, who is an incredible DP, we talked a lot before I started, but from the first shot, I said, I want every frame to look like a photograph. And he's like, I got it. First shot, something changed in me. Because directing before on all those other films had always been about just the work. Let's get the work done. The camera wasn't special. It was just there to tell the story. It wasn't, we don't need to change the lenses. We can figure all of this other stuff out, right? This movie required the certain lenses and certain looks and anamorphic lenses. And it required so much that again, trying to have it meet the pages on the script. So that to me was really, really a powerful moment. But I've never enjoyed directing, ever, until Jazzman. Yeah, never enjoyed it. Yeah, I enjoyed every moment. Yeah.
What was the inspiration? Did you have certain inspirations? This is your first period piece.
Yeah.
So did you have any certain inspirations in certain movies that you've watched over the years that you wanted to evoke that feeling?
I don't know if it was invoking the feeling of a particular movie, but there are movies that moved me, like The Color Purple and Schindler's List and Imitation of Life. And over the years, seeing all of these movies that my mother, it stopped her cold and made her think about over and over and over again. So, and not only that, my grandfather, Willie Campbell, he owned a juke joint called the S Club because it was in a S curb in this little country town in Greensburg, Louisiana. And I would always go and peek in the windows and see what people were doing after they thought I was in the bed. To see that life of knowing what my mother was going through, knowing what so many of our friends and cousins and family were going through, just being black in America, to see them in that room, losing themselves, having a great time with all the blues and the jazz. It was just so wonderful to have those experiences. So I pulled from all of that. Growing up in New Orleans, walking down Bourbon Street, I heard every kind of music represented my whole life. So that was my soundtrack. So all of those experiences were pulled into making Jazzman.
Mm-hmm. Now, music is a key part of the movie.
Yeah.
And also dance, because
Debbie Allen.
Yeah, Debbie Allen. So how was it like to work with Debbie Allen? Because from my understanding, Debbie Allen, years ago, when you were trying to think about getting this done, you were thinking about doing it with her. So what was it like working with her on this project?
Well, we talked about it maybe 18, 20 years ago. I think she was working in DreamWorks. You fact checkers could find the exact time, but it was somewhere around there. I know she was working at DreamWorks at the time, and they had done Amistad. And we were talking about doing Jazzman, and she was really excited about it. And it just never worked out. But 20 years later, I think, I really would like you to do the choreography. But then I thought, why don't you go with somebody young? Debbie's like 70 years old. I don't know if you... I'm telling you this. I'm not telling anybody else this. So that's my thought. And so I was like, no. We talked about it. So I called her up and we're talking. She said, oh, baby, I'd love to. I said, okay, great. So I'm thinking, okay, she's going to bring in people to help her figure it out. And, I saw her. She looks great. She's moving around great and all this other stuff. I'm thinking, okay, but she's going to bring in those young people to help her. Let me tell you something. Debbie walked in there and said, darling, your leg is not high enough. She kicks her leg up. She flips around. I was like, oh, my God. She is legendary and blew my mind at every moment of the choreography. I mean, if they weren't doing it right, she got up, showed them how to do it and where the leg and the foot and then everything should be at 70. So I was just blown away that she did it. Yeah, blown away. Yeah.
Now, we know you have so many different projects going on at all different times. Were you working on other things when you were working on this, or was it just your sole purpose for a while?
I was working on other things, but there, we stopped for the time to shoot this, and right before time to shoot it and the editing space to be able to make it what I needed it to be. So I had to completely hyper focus on it. Yeah.
Now, from what I understand, also this is your first film. This is your first TIFF, right?
Can you imagine? I was here with Precious as a producer, but I came on after the movie was done. Mm-hmm. Oprah and I did. But yes, this is my first film to premiere here. Yeah. Moving.
So what does it mean to you to finally have a movie? And I don't know if it was ever like the biggest aspiration to be at the film festivals, but what does it mean?
I was never a film festival person because, again, my intention was to focus on the audience. So I actually knew how phenomenal this was, but I had to talk to some friends of mine and tell me exactly what this means, right? Tell me exactly what it means, because I knew it was phenomenal. I know it's huge. I know it's prestige. I know it's all of those things. But me as a person, like how do I fit into it? How do I make sure I don't say the wrong things? How do I behave inside of it? And the person was so kind. They were like, Tyler, you just need to understand that this level of film is something that they accepted because it's worthy. And I thought, wow. And that was enough for me to understand that I'm supposed to be there, which is really, really a great feeling. Once I got to that, I could relax and enjoy the experience, and that's what I'm doing. I've been having a good time. Having a good time.
And going back to critics, what do you hope or do you think about like the critical response to this? Because it is at TIFF, and I mean, I feel like you've done great movies for a long time, but it's a different level. And I'm wondering what you're anticipating and what you're hoping for.
I can't let it in. Mm-hmm. I can't let it in. I've done the work. This is all I ever do. I've done the work, I put it out there, and that's all. There's nothing else I can do. I can't give people an opinion of it. Mm-hmm. All I know is I did my best. I did my absolute best, and that's okay with me. Mm-hmm. It's okay with me.
You talked a little bit about Netflix and about how being with Netflix helped you get to the point where you could do this movie, because it kind of showed how it dispelled the idea that black films don't travel. And you've been working with Netflix for a while. For years, was a theatrical play for you. This will have a theatrical component, I believe. But how important is theatrical still to you at this time, with streaming and everything that's going on in the world?
It saddens me that the theatrical is not what it used to be, because I think that every person should know what it feels like to see a movie on the big screen. I'll never forget being 5 years old for the first time seeing The Wiz, and I danced all the way home singing Ease On Down the Road. You know, I knew what that felt like. I want my son to feel that. I want everybody's kid to feel the silver screen. So I'm hoping that theaters are here to stay, you know, even in the difficult times of streamers and the streaming giants. But I also understand the power of being able to watch it from home and having people be able to sit and see it on their computer. I don't want anybody watching on their computer, but
iPhone?
Oh, their iPhone. God forbid the phone. So not the phone. But my hope is that the theaters survive somehow inside of the space where the streaming giants are taking over. But it has alleviated a lot of the pressure of having to deliver the box office.
Do you feel like Medea would have been as big as it in the movies, would have been as big as it was in franchises had you created it now, like started off in streaming? Like, do you feel like you can create franchises from streaming?
Oh, wow. I certainly feel like you can create franchises from streaming, but the very thought of me starting Medea at 52 on Netflix, I don't want to be her age playing her, so I'm glad it started when it did, but I do think there is space for a franchise to grow and become huge on streaming, of course, yeah.
At this festival, we already have, like on Friday there was The Woman King. We have your movie, we have The Inspection, we have
Sanaa Lathan.
We have The Blackening later on tonight at midnight. There's so many, and I'm probably not mentioning all of the black films that are here, black focused films, and the variety. You've been in this for so long. What do you think about this moment for black filmmakers? And also, I'm wondering, do you feel like there is more room for black creators to, have that, take that chance, like that you felt like you maybe couldn't do when you were first starting out?
Yeah, let me be very careful how I say this, because I'm trying to be diplomatic. I'm extremely excited for what's happening. The diversity, the choices, the opportunities that we're seeing as black people for the first time. It is amazing. But I worry because there's such a push for diversity and push for hiring people of color that I've found in situations that there are people who are being pushed into seats that they're not ready for. And that can be problematic. What I've done at Tyler Perry Studios is we train so many people. We brought up this crop of people that are doing an amazing job. But as soon as they're trained and they know the job and know it well, they're snatched out to go to some other bigger production, which is fine. Because if you want to find people of color who know what they're doing, if they can make it at Tyler Perry Studios, they can make it anywhere, because we work there, right? But I don't want to have us as black people in seats that we weren't ready for, and then have people that are not black that were moved out of the seats that you see, look what an awful job they're doing. But if we didn't get the qualifications or the teaching or the education to get there, then how are we given the seat so quickly? So it's my hope that in all of this diversity, in all of this change and push for there to be more inclusion, that we're also providing the time and the training to make sure that we can do a great job. Because I'm gonna tell you something. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you. What I found is there are many, many, many black people who are qualified, extremely smart in this business, who have not had the opportunity. So my hope is that more opportunity and education be given so that it's a system that works well and there's longevity in it. Because I saw this in the 90s where there were all these movies with black people in them, then all of a sudden, they were all gone away. You know, on television, the UPN, there were all these sitcoms. You know, all of a sudden, everything went away. It was an ebb and a flow. And I think, unfortunately, the death of George Floyd sparked so much conversation. Unfortunately, his death, but the good part of what he has left us as us having conversations about race and each other and what is happening. So, but in that, I just want us to be trained and qualified in those positions. Yeah.
And you certainly have created so many opportunities, not only for yourself, but for others, and obviously your studio. Do you see others following in your footsteps in that entrepreneurial way? I remember years ago, you're speaking somewhere where you're like, you can do it like yourself, and you have to realize you don't have to go to the studio, you can create your own studio, which is what you've done. Do you see that happening more so?
You know what I've learned is that I was talking to somebody the other day because I wanted to start another business. I got a ridiculous quote from a company that, you know, that we're going to do some digital effects. I'm just like, well, are you kidding me? We're going to start our own company. We're going to hire some people that are going to do this. See who wants to leave that company and go start their own company. And a person said to me, Tyler, you have to understand, a lot of people don't want to own. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people who just want to do the work and go home and live their lives. They don't want the responsibility, the pressure of turning the lights on and turning them off, and being the first one there and the last one to leave. And I got that. But what I realized is that in this industry, the only thing that's going to create lasting change, besides the teaching and the education and preparing us, is also the ownership. Having ownership of a studio where thousands of people, literally thousands of people, come to work every day, that is how you affect change, long-lasting change. This could be a moment where there's all of this move for diversity, then that could go away. But when you are owner, you can continue to hire and continue to train and bring up a new crop of people. And I'm hoping more people would become owners and producers and try and do it differently, but it's not for everybody. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was there ever a point in your career where I'm sure people approached you and just like, hey, Tyler, here's a check, I'd like to buy it from you? Like, was there ever a point where you're just like, you know what, I've done this for so long? You know?
Well, very early on, even when I hadn't done it, I had an opportunity to do a TV show with CBS and with Chuck Lorre, and Chuck Lorre was working on, I think it was 2.5 Men was the show he was working on. It was 2.5 Men and a Tyler Perry show, and he had to make a choice between the shows. And, I had a few meetings with him, and there were things I wanted and the ideas I had in the script, and he's like, no, I don't know about this, and, we don't want to say this, we don't want to say that. I'm like, wait, what? So I was praying, God, please let this deal fall apart. Please. The deal fell apart, and they called me up, my agent. He was so sad on the phone. He said, Tyler, I'm just so sorry. He decided to go with 2.5 Men, so they're not going to do your show, and I know you worked so hard. And I was like, I'm on the phone like, but I was like, yeah, it's so awful, man. It's okay. I was so happy. That led me to go to Atlanta and start House of Pain. Had no idea what I was doing. I did that show, put it on the air. It was awful. It was awful. But the ratings were higher than what was there. And so those first 10 I did were really bad, but the show got so much better. But my audience, that base that had been there with me, stood there in support. And I think we're approaching or crossing 400 episodes of that show right now. So it's been amazing. It's been amazing, yeah.
You talked about George Floyd and also earlier where we are in this moment with people wanting to ban books and not tell certain parts of history. What role do you feel like art has these days and needs to have in order to change the conversation in America?
Listen, the medium of film and television is one of the most important, because when you see visuals, it can shift a whole generation. I think that it was the visuals of the dogs in Birmingham attacking black people that caused the entire country to be outraged. It was the visual of Mamie Till saying, no, leave Emmett's casket open, that caused outrage. It was the visual of George Floyd with the police officer on his neck that made everybody, no matter what race, go, this is wrong. So when you are a person who's been given the gift to tell stories and paint visions, yes, you have a huge responsibility to affect change, whether you choose to or not, you can. And my hope is that as more storytellers, every race, as more storytellers begin to tell their stories, that we're all mindful of the power of every image that we can create.
And to that point, this is a movie that deals with Jim Crow and has painful points. And I know that there's some times when I feel like of late, in the last maybe 6 or 10 years, where you kind of hear from some people in the Black community, it's like, oh, I don't want to hear those stories anymore.
Yeah.
And when you coming out with this movie around this time, were you a little bit worried about people who were sort of like, it's just too painful, I don't want to hear it?
I ain't worried about them.
Okay.
No, because here's the thing. I have a 7-year-old son who is so removed from the way I grew up. He's also far removed from the way my mother and father grew up, and their parents grew up, the way they grew up. But I do not want him to ever not identify with the struggle and the pains that it took for him to have the freedoms that he has, right? So if we get to a place where we go, I don't want to hear that, I don't want to see that, I don't want to let that in, then what we're doing is denying a very intricate part of the mechanism that makes us who we are as a people. And I don't want us ever to forget what we've come through. It's like, I was doing some research and I read an article that Jewish people who survived the Holocaust, there was a study done on their DNA and how the pains and atrocities literally changed their DNA onto their kids. So to deny our history and all we went through and all we endured would be saying the very DNA that you have now, because of all of that, doesn't matter. So I would love to have a conversation with any Black person who doesn't want to talk about the pain of where we come from. There's a debt that we owe to all of those people who smiled, who endured, who kept themselves so we could be here. So, yeah.
I'm sure you're incredibly happy with the result of the movie, but I'm wondering how this movie changed you as a filmmaker.
I think that happened on Gone Girl. I was watching David Fincher work, somewhere between him doing 200 takes of each thing, but I was watching him work in his eye and how he was watching the way the light fell on a leaf on a table, and we did 1 million takes based on the light on that leaf. And I thought, this is ridiculous. But then I realized the brilliance of what he was doing and the way he sees, like the picture has to be the exact way he sees it in his mind. So listening to him and Ben Affleck talk about lenses and cameras and new technology, it opened me up to be more curious. And walking onto this set, seeing this world, driving these cars, seeing these costumes, seeing this attention to detail, because there was nowhere on this set that you could walk in and there not be something that represented or brought you back to the time. It just let me know that I love filmmaking. I love filmmaking. Yeah, that's what it did for me.
And given that you love filmmaking, what would you see being next? Like, could you see yourself going back to another period piece? Like, where do you go from A JAZZMAN'S Blues?
Madea goes to Toronto. That's not. Honestly, I don't want to. Listen, I've tried to live my life outside of a box because I know when I die, they're going to try to put me in one. So as important as Jazzman was and is to me to be made and get out and for the world to see it, it's also as important to me that the very audience that has been with me, that has stood right by my side, that has loved all of those Madea movies and plays that they are satisfied too, you know. They'll enjoy Jazz Man, but I don't know if it'll bring the laughter that is needed, like, I know it won't, that it's needed like some of the other movies that I've done. I have people, girls in Africa, from Oprah School, who would tell me how something Medea said spoke to them about a relationship that they held on to. For me, that's powerful. You know, those moments are really powerful. So I'm gonna go wherever I feel led to go. So, but I'll never deny or leave the very audience that brought me here. So I'll be all over the place.
On that note, I want to thank you so much. This has just been such a wonderful talk.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is wonderful.
Great job, man. Thank
and
you.
tonight.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, man. Really good job.
Yeah.